Salutations everybody, it is Matty here today. I hope you're all doing fantastic. Today we are taking a look at Doom Eternal, Bethesda's upcoming game developed by id Software. My lips like folded up there. Anyway, a lot of press outlets and YouTubers got their hands on this game, about 3 hours, and so there's a ton of previews that we're going to be ripping through today, or ripping and tearing, as I'm sure a lot of people would like to call it. And man, I remember the days when I was invited to these events to preview games. Man, good times. I kid. The gameplay you're watching in the background is from my boy Camelworks. Big thank you to my Australian brother for providing. I really do appreciate it. The link to his video will be in the description down below, so do check it out. Anyway, a little lore, if you will, about Matty and Doom 2016. I really liked the game. I gave it a recommendation when I had reviewed it, but ultimately, I couldn't term myself the super fan that I feel so many people are for Doom 2016. I really thought that the third act was flawed. I felt it dragged on a bit. It felt too familiar, and it didn't feel as fun as the rest of the game. And so, as someone who normally just stays away from previews and likes to develop my own opinion, I had to know if Doom Eternal was more of the same that group of people, which is a very large group of people, enjoyed, or would it also cater to me as someone who thought that the game had some pacing problems, quite honestly, and there is some really strong positive feedback, but as I dug more and more, it seems that some of the more critical elements were buried underneath all of that. So we're going to be going through a ton of different perspectives today to sort of discuss my viewpoint on the game. For those who do want to make sure that I am not just speaking for myself, even the developers of Doom 2016, id Software, the creative director, Hugo Martin, did say this: arenas are a part of Doom. Yes, they can be overused, and we will accept that criticism, especially in the second half of the game. That's accurate. The incidental combat areas could be improved upon, and we feel like we have. So they're confident with what they're doing in Doom Eternal, but just know that I'm saying something that even the developers, the people who made the game, agree with. So I'm not saying that that's the fact. If you liked it, that's fine. I'm just letting you guys know I don't think it's unwarranted criticism. So part of my issue with the third act is I felt like the game went on a little too long, which is where my first thing that sort of worries me comes in, because the first piece I read was from GameSpot, which says, during our preview demo, we had the chance to speak with creative director Hugo Martin. He discussed how Doom Eternal is handling difficulty in new ways and how all its elements of combat and exploration come together. But Martin also made the mention of the game's length. We're hellbent on engaging you from beginning to end. This is a 22+ hour game, he said. Now, as someone who really likes to have my $60 justified, longer games do sound great to me. I'm certainly not going to start complaining about that, but I want to make sure if it ends up sort of being like Doom 2016, which it took me, I think, 16 hours to complete, and if it starts following the same pacing issues that that game had, and then Doom Eternal ends up being a minimum of 6 hours longer than that, that's a little concerning for me, because as we'll read on with these previews, the game rewards you with a ton of stuff really early. They say that the first few hours really hit you with more than you even saw in most of the original Doom, which is kind of crazy when you think about all the weapons and abilities and things you can do that are handed your way. So let's keep digging in. It's all about adding new things to the game to keep Doom Eternal engaging from beginning to end. So this is kind of a major staple for the development team. Martin said about the game's new acrobatic elements. A critique of Doom 2016 that is really fair is its hallways and arenas, but in between the arenas we had to do more. We had to do more than give you great skate parks to murder demons in. We needed to make the areas between the skate parks just as engaging with these little combat puzzles to be solved. So I love the term of skate parks. I think that really perfectly defines what Doom sort of does in this really strange way. Now, what you're watching here is from Camelworks' video, once again, describing some of the traversal, some of the exploration that's a lot more thoughtful this time around. You can see there's a lot of climbing, scaling, using your dash ability, and this leads to more verticality, more secrets to discover, more rewarding exploration. And personally, for me, I know a lot of people love that in-your-face pacing, but at a first glance, something that sort of slows the game down a little bit in those moments in between, lets you catch your breath, essentially. I think that's really, really important. I know a major complaint with Rage 2 was that that game slowed down too much in the moments in between. Like, the gameplay was fantastic, but then driving from point A to point B with not much going on was bad. I viewed it as a really good thing, and I've said that to the point of redundancy, so I don't need to repeat it. more on these combat areas. Part of matching these new incidental combat areas to the game's core combat arenas is the goal of mastery. It's skill-based platforming, Martin says. We want the game to be replayable. A traversal puzzle that was a little difficult to figure out in the first level becomes second nature by the third level, and then replaying the first level, you kind of just Tony Hawk your way through it, and there's a satisfaction to that. Now, I'll be the first to admit, I didn't really heavily replay Doom 2016. Actually, I remember once I beat the game, I went straight into the multiplayer, sadly multiplayer that they removed. I really enjoyed what Doom Eternal offered in its multiplayer mode. They've swapped it out for like a 2v2 mode that's completely different, and I'll remain open-minded to it. But for me, that's where my, quote, replayability, or where I sunk myself into in the, quote, end game, end quote. But to see them sort of designing levels this way, I kind of like. But I do think that traversal platforming can hurt a game's replayability, because what you'll have is these distinct moments in your mind of, I want to go here and re-experience this again, or I'm much better, so I can't wait to do this on a higher difficulty. But getting there through some of these traversal challenges, these puzzles, may slow things down, because you can only speed through certain puzzles so much. Now, I don't think Doom's going to suddenly turn into Zelda and have you doing complex puzzles. I think they're supposed to be light puzzles, mostly focused on movement, which is fine with me. It's just something I think worth thinking about. Here's something that's actually really cool that I think people will appreciate, because I did see some complaints about the HUD, but Eurogamer was the only one to mention this. To begin with, let's talk about basic features. Doom Eternal offers an even larger options menu than its predecessor, which is pretty impressive. It's possible to adjust just about every element of the HUD and controls. Importantly, the center weapon position and simplified crosshairs are both available, and this is my preferred way to play the game. I really appreciate how customizable the game is straight away, as it caters to a wide range of players and allows you to dial in to that perfect feel, which is very important with a FPS game that actually has you moving and engaging with lots of parts of the level and switching out weapons. Yes, that feel has to be just right. So as many customizable options as possible is great, but I think for those who were complaining about the HUD, I know it was very colorful. It seemed to kind of argue a bit with what was happening on screen in the game. I totally understand that. I think that's warranted. You can customize it. I don't know if it means you can customize where it is, or if you can actually, say, a la Fallout, customize the color of the HUD. That would definitely be nice. I would like just one uniform color for the entire HUD instead of the multiple colors that are just everywhere on the screen. So Doom Eternal also has a hub, apparently, and I'm gonna remain skeptical on this one, because I remember, for example, Prey had a bit of a hub. We also saw Wolfenstein 2 had a hub. Now, Prey did a good job with it, but also Arcane is just excellent at designing levels, whereas Wolfenstein 2's hub really left a lot to be desired. It was kind of confusing to navigate. It felt forced. And ultimately, I think it shows that every Bethesda IP can't just fit in and do this hub thing that they like to do. And so that's why with Doom, I think it can work. id Software is certainly talented enough to make it happen. I'm just going to remain a little bit skeptical on it. So let's read a little bit about it. Once into the game, what immediately becomes apparent is how different progression is handled, and it's the biggest change from Doom 2016. Rather than focusing on a single location, Eternal allows players to visit different areas around the planet. This is accessed from a central hub location, basically a flying space spire inhabited by the Doomslayer, which is called the Fortress of Doom, by the way, which he uses to travel around. It's a fun idea and thankfully doesn't slow down the gameplay. More to the point, it means that each stage can offer a unique look and feel without a big sudden change feeling out of place or jarring. So if you guys need a comparison, to me, what it actually sounds like is Demon's Souls. Demon's Souls had this one central hub, and then you'd go up like a staircase and go into a portal, and it would take you to a completely different level. And I think that's important to know as well, because apparently that game's being remade for the PlayStation 5, and it's going to be a launch title. That's the rumor as it stands, but that's probably the best comparison for it, and I think that's good because levels can feel fresh. I don't think the level or environmental design was ever an issue with the original Doom, but if there's more variety there, then certainly that can't hurt the game. Now, PC Gamer was pretty critical of the game. Let's read what Andy had to say. "Draining is the word. Doom Eternal is a good game, don't get me wrong, just one I'll enjoy in shorter bursts when I play it at home. The relentless pace and non-stop chaos will appeal to a lot of people, but I prefer a little more space in my games. There was a moment in my demo where I was exploring the Fortress of Doom, the Slayer spaceship, and the only time I felt like I could actually soak in my surroundings. The rest of the time it was just all so breathless that I never really got a chance to stop and process what was happening or take in that amazing environment art. The screenshots and trailers don't do the full game justice, by the way. It looks really stunning in motion, especially at a blistering frame rate on a high-end PC. It's just so chunky. I can't say I really understand what chunky means, but yeah, as you can see, the opinions are overwhelmingly positive, but I think underneath that, we're starting to see a little bit more criticism surfacing for Doom Eternal, draining, confusion about level designs, how will the pacing be in the long run? We're going to talk about that in a second. I think these are all things just to be aware of, because a lot of the headlines are like, it's rip and tear good, it's bloody fun, you know, that type of stuff, which is well deserved. But ultimately, I think these preview roundups can be really helpful for the consumer to get a broad perspective on what's being said by a ton of different sites and what overlaps. Wes says, from the trailer, we know that there's a sword somewhere in the later game, and I'm all about super powerful melee weapons in first-person shooters. I'm with you on feeling going through the motions a bit, though even in just the 3 hours. Some people will read your distillation above and say, well, that's any shooter, but Doom 2016, for example, was more balanced in how it paced out combat encounters with exploring its levels. You were engaging different parts of your brain, and that kept it engaging. In Eternal, there's some really beautiful scenery to gawk at, and you can seek outside paths for secrets, but structurally it does feel a bit repetitive. So the reason I want to highlight this is not to bolster my own argument, but to make sure people are aware that if you played Doom 2016, whether it was now or back when it first launched, and you felt like it was sort of like a rhythm, like I started to feel by the third act, where I was like, okay, another combat arena, okay, run a little bit, maybe a little exploration, another combat arena. It just felt very rhythmic. Then it seems like this game's going to have that. And look, if you're having that after the first 3 hours, I've attended press events where I've played something and said, I could see this being an issue down the line. Most notably was Borderlands, Fallout 76. I distinctly remember discussing with friends the chaos of Borderlands 3 could get tiresome by the end game, which I was correct on. I distinctly remember with Fallout 76, I thought some of the bugs were tolerable in my preview build, but I said this could be an issue come the full game if it continues to slap us in the face. Obviously that did happen. So all I'm saying is be wary that if someone is having in a short period of time a preview event where it's just that section of the game, and obviously for those who don't know, these preview events are usually gauged to show some of the best parts of the game to really impress and of course bring out positive previews, which in turn can help bolster pre-orders and people's interest in the game. That yeah, if a group of people who played the game are getting a little tired of it after 3 hours, they could see the repetitiveness start to set in, then imagine when they sit down again to play the full game. It is something that can be a little concerning. And of course, one last thing to wrap it all up, because I know my audience is very big on modding. Doom will never be Eternal without mods. Doom Eternal developers said that the game is too complicated to launch with mod support. Doesn't rule it out in the future, but as it stands now, there isn't going to be mod support. And I think that is also important to note. But as you guys can see, Doom Eternal is a much more big, broader version of what Doom 2016 offered. So it's going to be more combat arenas, more traversal, more of those light combat puzzles as you go along. I think it's going to be a very fun game. It's just going to be interesting to see how that last section of the game holds up. That's where I think the real test is going to be put into place. I have no questions whatsoever that I will enjoy this game, because I know when I pick it up, it's going to be fun. It's geared to be fun. And if you guys recall, when I was doing my top games of 2019, a lot of them were games I just found really fun. I reconnected with that part of myself last year of just enjoying games and just going back to them and just having fun with them. Not everything has to be like this mind-bending story or huge critique. It's just games can be fun. So I think Doom Eternal has a great chance to really vibe with me. Unlike Doom 2016, part of my shifting in taste, but also a big part of it, of course, is with the potential that there is that constant engagement. There is more mechanics, more weapons, more things to mess around with towards the end game, which can continuously keep it interesting. Obviously, there's going to be that stretch in Doom Eternal where you're going to hit what is that end game period. They're going to stop giving you new rewards and sort of say, okay, here you go. Here's the test. Let's see how you do. You got everything at your disposal. You're sort of in that God mode now. Go crazy. And a lot of people revel in that. I revel in a bit of the carrot dangling in front of me, but I can absolutely get into a power fantasy. Do not get me wrong. So we'll see how this game vibes with me, but ultimately, I just wanted to share with you guys a bit of a roundup for Doom Eternal, what the press was saying, what some influencers were saying, and get some of your thoughts, of course, in the comments down below. So fire away. Are you looking forward to Doom Eternal anymore now after this recent press preview event, or are you just still kind of on the game? Or maybe, you know, you're just gonna wait for a sale regardless, even though you may be interested. Let me know. Other than that, follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. Those links are in the description down below. Big thank you to all the patrons who continue to rip and tear into my heart. I love each and every single one of you. That's kind of cute, wasn't it? I'll catch you guys next time. Do consider supporting my Patreon as it fuels all the content I create here. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.